with me. This reminded me of Darren Williams' ankle problems, and he just kept getting cortisone shots, and look where that got him. So if you're Kyrie, if you're the Nets, just get the shoulder surgery, repair whatever is nagging you, and come back healthy next year. I mean, what do you make of this whole news?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty interesting because when you look here, the Nets have a middle of the road schedule down the stretch. They're 17th in strength of schedule down the way. Their opponents are about 500. And you do have to wonder, there's some teams there. I mean, the team that would obviously be there, I mean, Orlando has one of the easiest schedules left. I think they're probably going to move up the standings. I think they're going to probably take the 7. And then the question is, I don't really think so. I mean, Chicago has a really tough schedule. Washington has a really tough schedule, and so does Detroit. So I don't really see any of those teams catching them. So it's just going to be interesting because the Nets, I mean, I think they're stuck in the 7-8. I think there's a really good chance they drop. And the truth is, unless they make it up to like a 5, they're not advancing anywhere anyway this year. They're just not. If you're stuck in the 7-8, you're going to get bludgeoned by whoever you're playing in the first round. So I think you're right. I think it's important for them to look long term because I don't think this is their year. And I think it's important that they think long term, they get things in order, and they hope to come back next year where who knows what'll happen. I mean, when you look around the league and you look around the Eastern Conference in particular, it's really going to be interesting to see next year what ends up happening. Gordon Hayward could not be on the Celtics. Who knows what the Raptors will do? Who knows where the Sixers will be? If the Heat kind of stand pat, there's a universe in which at the end of all this, the Nets come into next year and they're still, one of the favorites to win the East. So, I mean, don't throw that away for a chance to get probably a competitive first round series at best, make it to the second round. I mean, that's just not worth it. So, I think if you're a Nets fan, you have to think that this is probably about time to kind of cash the chips in and hey, honestly, I know no one wants to hear this. I know no Nets fans want to hear this, but maybe this is a year where you kind of like just let things go. Maybe you rebuild a little bit. I think.
I've been saying that.
Yeah.
I've been saying that. It's house money. And I know a lot of people give me flack for that, but it's house money. Look, Durant's rehabbing, and this is very Nets. The fact that this news breaks and they know it's going to be a big story, and then Kevin Durant's working out at UCLA, and someone just posted a video on Twitter of him draining threes and doing some drills with a former Nets employee. And I think that's one thing to kind of calm Nets fans' nerves tonight, because with this Kyrie news, at least I know Durant's rehab's progressing. So if I'm Durant, I'm doing what I'm doing. And if I'm Kyrie, I'm going to see that specialist. And then if surgery's on the table, just suck it up and do it. I know he wants to play. I know that he cares what people thinks, and that's, one of his potential downfalls as a human. Look, we're all human. And I know that he lets these things bother him. So I want him to get healthy and then just quiet the naysayers next season. But looking to this year, I mean, the All-Star break kind of came at a crappy time for the Nets because they finished with 2 very impressive wins over Indiana and then over the defending champs, the Toronto Raptors, on Wednesday night. Without Kyrie and without KD, LeVert did his thing. Dinwiddie's been playing well. Jared Allen, DeAndre Jordan. So they got a scrappy team, and if there's any silver lining for when Durant and Irving are healthy, is that this team will be battle-tested and ready to rock.
And I would say one more thing to consider here is that this is a draft where no one knows who is going to be the number 1 pick. There's some people who think it might be Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, James Wiseman. No one really knows. There's no one who scouts are saying is a sure thing. This is also the type of year where I'm just going to be honest. If I'm a Nets fan, I'm kind of thinking to myself, might not be the worst thing if we miss the playoffs when we have our own pick, if I recall.
They don't have their own pick.
I thought they had their own pick this year.
No, it went to Atlanta, and Atlanta moved the pick in the 4-way deal. So I think, I think either Minnesota has it now, I think, but they do have Philly's lottery protected. So if you're a Nets fan, you root for the Sixers to make the playoffs, but barely, and then they'll pick like 19th or 18th, and then they have a second-round pick.
Well, scratch everything I just said.
There's no tanking going on in Brooklyn. Today, Tuesday, February, it's the 4th anniversary of Sean Marks' hire as head coach. So what that man's done in 4 years, bringing in Kenny, the rebuild, getting these stars. It's been a wild ride. And I'm not going to sit here and be brought down by this Kyrie news. He's injury prone. I've accepted that. So let's just keep riding it out with the guys that are out there playing and see what happens. If they win, great. If they lose next year, look who's waiting in the wings. So I'm not going to sit here and cry foul about it. It happened. I just don't want this to affect Kyrie long term. I don't want this to affect the Nets long term. So get the procedure.
Still Team Kyrie.
Yeah, I'm still Team Kyrie. Look, I'm not. Look, everyone in this earth has some sort of thing they deal with mentally. No one is perfect. And if you're someone that's happy-go-lucky all the time, you're on drugs. Everyone is dealing with something, whether they talk about it openly or not. I'm very open with my feelings. I go to therapy. I'm not going to sit here and give this guy crap for what he goes through mentally. You know, especially him being in the limelight, losing his grandfather who was close to him, every move getting scrutinized. Ben, can you imagine someone following you around every day with a notepad? Oh, Ben just flicked a booger. Let's write a story. That's how these athletes get profiled and treated by the media. That's why we don't have video on this podcast, Ben, because you're sitting there recording this and just flicking boogers all over your desk, and it's disgusting.
Your very hurtful lies aside, I agree with you. I would say that Kyrie, I mean, he's a great basketball player. It remains to be seen. We're still kind of waiting to see. I mean, all I'll say is, I mean, no matter how you slice it, this is going to make it a real interesting offseason in Brooklyn with everything that's happening now. I mean, I hate to say it, but the writing is kind of on the wall. It seems like, I mean, I don't want to write him off yet, but this could be, if he does get this surgery, you know, that's kind of the end of the season for the Nets. I mean, that's sort of what we're looking at, is that they're not going anywhere.
I'm okay with that. Look at last year's team that wasn't expected to do anything. It's the same thing this year without D'Angelo Russell. So whatever they do, but at least they know who's waiting. They're not saying, well, we have another young team, we have to attract free agents. They attracted the free agents already. Kevin Durant will be suiting up in a number 7 Brooklyn Nets uniform in a few short months, whenever that is.
Keep your pants
on. Now, I think, was there a chance he comes back this year if it weren't for this Kyrie news? I'd say maybe. But I think it's just better to just have them both come back healthy, or as healthy as they could possibly be, and get ready to go. But I just thought that was a bit of breaking news here as we were getting ready to do the show, so I thought we'd cover that. But in other news, a certain NBA coach, I think, is making a beeline towards the exit. It's a bit surprising, huh? John Beilein, who left Michigan, was there for a long time, got a 5-year guaranteed deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And 2/3 of the way through year one, all signs point to him being out the door on his own terms. I mean, look, you're a college guy. You're not too far from the Michigan area. I mean, what's going on?
Well, I mean, the first thing you could tell is that this team is a disaster. And I think we need to take a couple minutes to really properly appreciate what an absolute disaster the Cleveland Cavaliers have been. If you take out LeBron James from this franchise, I don't know what you get in the last 20 years from them, Jason. I mean, they were a train wreck before LeBron got there.
How dare you talk about Anderson Varejao like that?
I mean, just look at the facts. Look at the numbers. Look at the win-loss records. I mean, when they've had LeBron, they've been all right. And when he's left, it has been an absolute unmitigated disaster.
The factory of sadness.
It's unbelievable. I mean, you look at this team, and when he's not there, they are completely incompetent as a franchise. I mean, you really take a look at that. The last year LeBron was there, which was 2017, 2018. And then the year after, and they didn't lose that much outside of LeBron. They went from 50 wins down to 19. And that tells you one part of it. But the other part is just now you look at this team, guys don't want to play together. You look at Kevin Love. I mean, Kevin Love is absolutely miserable on this team. You're watching him pouting. He doesn't really want to play. They have no idea of what they're doing. They're getting, Andre Drummond when they already have 2 big guys. I mean, it's just this kind of like comedy of errors to watch them. And they're lucky that LeBron came back because, frankly, Kyrie, he didn't he didn't have enough on that team without LeBron. And they made a good move to draft him, but he couldn't carry this team. And now we're watching another coach come in and another coach say, you know what? I don't really want to be here. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with whatever's going on with the franchise and the front office and so on. I mean, we know that Gilbert just recently had some medical conditions, so I mean, obviously thoughts and prayers for him, but at the same time, there's something here that's just not right because they continue to struggle. And I mean, personally, I think a lot of it starts with Colin Sexton, who I don't know if he's the guy for them. And if I was them, I would see if they could get something from another team for him because I don't believe he's a lead guard. I don't think he's a good enough passer, and I sometimes I do kind of question his attitude and the way that he plays and whether that's gonna lead to a winning basketball. And I don't know if he can play with Garland, which this just underscores how much of a mess it is because they really part of the reason they drafted Garland was that Beeline likes to play this kind of two guard thing. He likes to have kind of two guys who can both be point guards. So they get a second point guard, and I mean, now you kind of look back and you're like, oh boy, if they end up with those two guys, are they going to end up having to sell low on one of them because they can't play together?
See, Ben, you're making this about the team. I think this is more about Beeline because you look at his track record at Michigan. When you become a college basketball coach, a head coach at the collegiate level, halfway through the season, you can't be like, I'm out. You're out there recruiting kids to come play for you, to mold them into men, to get a handful of them ready for the pros. There are a lot of Michigan alums in the NBA that Beeline coached, okay? And for him to not even 20% into a 5-year pact, just seriously consider stepping down because, look, as of this recording, it's not official, but that just says a lot about him. I know the NBA is not for everyone. You saw John Calipari kind of dip his toes in the water in the 90s with the Nets and then step out. Coach K never wanted to do it, but he coached the Olympics. And then on the other side of the coin, you look at the success stories like Brad Stevens and to a moderate degree Billy Donovan, and even, it's the opposite with a guy like Jim Harbaugh in football. Couldn't handle the NFL, was great at college. That's what John Beeline is. And it's not like Michigan would be awaiting his return with open arms. Either he can't coach anymore or the organization is as bad as you're describing it, because in a perfect world, they have a couple of pieces. Garland and Sexton, if they don't pan out, trade one of them. You have two of the most dominant big men in the NBA regular season in recent memory with the numbers Kevin Love is capable of putting up, with the rebounding numbers of Andre Drummond. Tristan Thompson, who at his peak was a fringe all-star type. I mean, they have pieces that I think if they make the right deals, they may be able to form some semblance of a young core. But I wanted to make out Beeline because it's just astounding that he would want to walk away from something like this without having even seen it through one full season. Then it's February.
I don't know, man. I don't see much of an if here. This is a franchise that is sort of in disarray with the whole way that it's been operated. I mean, we saw a guy like Ty Lue who was just trying to get out of there. I mean, it's just felt like there's a lot of drama around this franchise at all times with the way they handled LeBron's first exit. Since then, the incompetence since then, the way that Dan Gilbert has positioned himself in that organization against LeBron for some time that kind of drove out LeBron from that team as well. I mean, I personally, I think this is really an example of the organization just being in complete disarray, and this seems like a coach who felt like he was getting one thing, is getting another, and now, I mean, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what the news says, where the motivations are, who's pushing, because there was a lot of news going both ways, and I mean, if you're Beeline, maybe you just say to yourself, I'd kind of just rather be somewhere else. And it certainly sounds like for the Cavaliers, maybe they're interested in kind of getting a different coach in there. I don't know. I mean, I'd be interested to see as this comes out who's pushing for this. If this is all Beeline, then I'm with you. But if this is a mutual thing, I